I believe you're very interested in having a look at buying property and self-managed super fund.
Yeah, that's correct. I saw your ad on Facebook. I really don't know much about it, but certainly from the comments in the ad, it seems you've got a really good presence in the market. So was curious to know more. That's all.
Okay. Could I just get, a little personal, but could I just get a bit of a background on your age and are you married? Do you have children, for example?
I'm 42 years old, married, 3 kids, and I'm a teacher by trade.
Teacher. Okay, good. So
Yeah.
very steady job. Do you know if, I assume you don't have a self-managed super fund set up currently? You're either in an industry or retail fund?
No, I kind of don't know much about it at all. Even with my super, I don't really apply much effort into kind of understanding it. It's something that just happens in the background. So I was kind of curious about how self-managed super funds work and how you buy property in them and kind of everything. I'm really not very clever when it comes to this stuff.
But yeah, I'm assuming you're on a soaring wage and they pay straight into probably an industry fund based on that answer. So it's just sort of sitting there and chugs along, and assume you've probably got some insurance in there that would be standard insurance, which can be good or bad, just depending on the policy of what it is. So do you have any idea how much you would have in your super fund?
I have, I have a little over 200K. My wife has some as well, but I don't know much about the fund itself. I can't even tell you the name of it. I just don't remember.
Yeah, no, it's more sort of the balance. With a self-managed super fund, there's obviously running costs, which are normally a bit higher than a retail fund. So you need to have at least a minimum balance of what you say. 250 is probably a little bit better. And that's also what ASIC actually recommends, 250. But I have had clients definitely do it with $200,000. So that's sort of the bare minimum. You need that because of the running costs. Otherwise, they can chew into your balance. You need a higher return, obviously. So that's good.
With my wife's super, it'll be probably 250. I'd say almost certainly. But I'm really not sure what. Can you tell me how a self-managed super fund works? Does that mean that my super fund is it is my own super company, basically? How does it work?
It's a bit complicated, but as it sort of describes, self-managed super fund, it means exactly that. You are self-managing. So you actually need to be involved. You have responsibilities as the trustee, director of the trustee, depending on how it's set up. So there's a lot more compliance, but you are in control. So you have to be prepared to accept that you're in control. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have a team around you. Accountants, auditors, financial planners, people like myself to help you, maybe buyer's advocates. So you have to have a team when you're doing this. Otherwise, you can get yourself into some trouble and you don't want to go down that path. So it's a brand new structure. You make up a name. So it's the XYZ Superannuation Fund. It has a trustee. I'll keep it simple for the moment. And what you do is you roll over your current funds, so your 200 plus your wife's 50 into the new fund. Okay, that's keeping it fairly simple. Once that money's in there, you're in control. Okay, so then you can look at buying a property, and one of the advantages of doing that is that it's the only way a super fund can leverage, by buying a property in a self-managed super fund. So it gets a loan to buy a property. So the power of leverage is what's behind that to theoretically increase your returns. So it almost can give you super returns in theory, because you're, instead of 250,000 growing your super fund, all of a sudden you've got $1 million asset growing in your super fund. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I've got, there's a lot of information there. You said I need I read in on your ad that you're an accountant for like, I don't know, 20, 30 years or something.
Yes.
You've obviously got this background, but you're not practicing as an accountant now, are you? Just a mortgage,
No.
or I shouldn't say just a mortgage broker, but you specialize in financing SMSF, right? So you get the finance for the SMSF property, right?
That's 100% correct. But what the accounting background does is help me work with, seamlessly with your financial planners and your accountants, because I understand obviously the structures and how it works. And, that background knowledge sort of can help you on the sort of bits and pieces that are involved in doing that. And I've actually worked in real estate as well. So I actually understand the whole process from the very beginning to the very end, whether it be the accounting side or the real estate side. But yes, I don't do the accounting, I don't do the real estate, but I have the knowledge behind me. So, and I know people I can recommend that I trust to be able to help you on those types of things.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because I wouldn't know. You'd obviously have to have a specialist in all of those fields. That's kind of a lot of money. So I guess, am I going to have to pay for all these people every year? And does investing in my own property, with the gains that are generated from having a self-managed super fund, is that more likely to generate gains that will offset all these costs? There's obviously costs in setting up the SMSF and maintenance as well. Can I just go through those first? Because that's like one of the stuff I've read is very confusing to me.
The costs vary a little bit, but it is in the range of $3,000 to $5,000 to set up a self-managed super fund. Generally, an accountant or financial planner will assist you to do that. They use a lawyer, but you can do it direct through them. So that's sort of your base setup cost. You then have annual costs, and that's what I was sort of referring to before. If you've got too low a balance, the annual costs can chew into that. Now, again, that varies, but again, it's probably about the $3,000 to $5,000 mark. It depends on how many investments and how many transactions you have in your super fund. So you might have a property, you might also have, if you've got 50 shares in there as well, that's obviously more work involved for the accountant and the auditor. So that would be at the higher range of that $3,000 to $5,000. If you've just got a property and some cash sitting there, perhaps in an offset account, which you can have in a self-managed super fund, the fee is more likely to be around the sort of $3,000 mark, because the accountant has to prepare the financial statements, the tax return, and then you have to have an auditor check it, who then actually reports and makes sure that your super fund keeps complying. So that's it. Those people are around you to make sure you don't make a mistake and make the fund non-compliant.
Right. Okay. Okay. So the 200 or 250K that you said, that is essentially required then for a deposit on a house. Is that right? That's the deposit, or is that mandated by ASIC as a means of somehow establishing?
It's just a guide that you should have to be able to not have those set up and ongoing costs chew away too much of your balance of your fund, because you can actually put in your insurances in there as well. But so if you've got insurance in there as well, like you probably have in your retail fund, you can move that into your self-managed super fund, and that would be a cost also. So that's what I sort of say, if you've got super coming out, you've got your audit fees and your accountant fees, and they add up to sort of $10,000. What's $10,000 on 250? Yeah, it's got to return that before you see a cent. That's why they sort of have this magic figure of minimum 250, so that it's not chewing away too much of your balance of your fund.
All right. Now, my wife and I have been looking at an investment property for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
First of all, the SMSF is available for my first investment property, right? Like there's a lot of competing information in the market. Is buying in my SMSF the better way of doing it, or should I consider just a standard sort of investment purchase? Like, I'm trying to balance the two and understand what works in my favor. Is there some sort of tax, benefit or something
They've probably seen or heard at least that there's been changes in the budget. self-managed
Yes.
super funds are more advantageous than they've ever been since this budget has come out. Negative gearing has gone and capital gains tax has changed. For you as an individual, in a self-managed super fund, they have left capital gains tax alone. So that's the other, it's a tax concessional entity. So you either pay, the maximum you pay is 10%, depending what period you are in your life, or if you get to pension phase, which basically in simple terms means you're 65 and not working, zero tax on your capital gain. So it is one of the last few after the budget tax concessional entities that you can actually use. Most of the funds aren't running at a loss. The maximum gearing is normally about 80%, but you still have your salary contributions going in, so they're not normally negative gearing in a self-managed super fund, and you can't get it in your own name. So the big advantage from putting in your own name now to self-managed super funds is the capital gains tax concessions.
So when the department pays me my salary every month, they're going to pay, instead of paying State Super or wherever I'm with, they're going to pay my own self-managed super fund. So they're going to
absolutely
make a contribution.
Correct. You put in a new form saying, please pay to my self-managed super fund. You just have to prove that it's a complying fund, which is, as I said, anybody can search any self-managed super fund to make sure it's complying at any time.
All right. Now, the contributions made by my employer,
yes,
I guess, is that designed then to mitigate what might be necessary to pay if it was, I don't know how to articulate this properly because it's all new to me, right? But is that to mitigate the money that I would otherwise have to contribute myself if there was a shortfall in the rent? Like the missus and I have been looking at positively geared properties, all right, because we figured it makes more sense to have money that is returned to us rather than, so a balance between something that's going to appreciate and money returned in excess of what's required to service the mortgage.
Okay.
And I'm just looking at the contribution now as covering that kind of shortfall. Is that kind of how it works?
That's exactly how it works, number one. Number two, remember, in a self-managed super fund, you're only paying 15% tax. So if you have a positively geared property in your own name, and I think you're on about 90-odd thousand, that puts you in, I can't remember exactly, but at least the 30% tax bracket. So you will be paying double the tax in your own name to what your super fund's paying. Bearing in mind, the more money you have in your super fund, because it's only paying 15%, it grows and grows and grows quicker than if you had it in your own name, losing 30%.
All right. That kind of makes sense. So what sort of property?
I know it's complicated.
Yeah, trying to wrap my head around all of this, trying to understand it. So I can buy exactly the same property in my SMSF that I compared to what I would just as a personal investment, right? Is there any? Am I limited?
There is the short answer is yes, but there are some cutouts or whatever with your restrictions in your self-managed super fund. For example, it must be on one title in a self-managed super fund. And the classic example with that, and especially in resi, is that you may have a property that has a car park or a storage cage on a separate title, okay, to the actual apartment, for example. That cannot go into a super fund. It has to be one asset on one title. So that if it's got a car park, it all has to be on one title. So there's that restriction, which doesn't come into play a lot, but it does happen. I actually have seen it happen where someone's tried to buy it and they had to completely redo the contract. Other than that, you're pretty much the same. You can buy commercial or you can buy residential. Normal sort of commercial properties. You can also, not in your case, but if somebody was self-employed, they can actually run their business from the commercial premises. The other limitation around resi is that you cannot live in it, you cannot use it as a holiday home, you cannot buy one off a related party. Nothing to do with related party, and that's got a very wide definition. So, yes, pretty much the same, but there are some restrictions that you do need to be careful about. I know that, again, it's probably a bit confusing, but if you just go and buy a normal house, block of land, not a problem. You just go buy a commercial shop, not a problem. Same.
So, can I rent it to someone I know?
No. For a resi, no. You cannot buy land either, is the other one. You cannot buy land, just vacant land.
Okay. Could I buy, for example, a yacht and an SMSF? Like, does it have to be property? I'm just curious how this all works. I know you're a broker, so, I know this is not that I'm going to go out and buy a yacht, but it's just a thought, because you can live in a yacht, right?
No,
it's still
you can buy a yacht, you cannot use it.
Well, that's self-defeating, isn't it?
You can. It's the same if you go and buy. We're really getting into it here, but it's the same if you buy gold, for example, or a painting. It cannot be stored in your house. It must be securely stored. It must be insured.
So you can buy a painting
up in your house.
Oh, that's interesting. Property's a safe bet anyhow, because of the obvious appreciation and so on. So the missus and I looked at for a time before we kind of moved away from it, but I'm just curious how it would work. We looked at NDIS properties, which were a 2-contract deal. So it was a new build, and only recently we discussed, like, this tends to fit in the negative gearing basket because it's a brand new build. We weren't sure if negative gearing applied, because the other issue is it becomes then, I believe, a commercial venture.
Okay, let me unpack that.
Personal investor, but it's a two. The important thing there is it was a 2-contract deal. Yes, please.
Let me unpack that. It cannot be a 2-part contract for a self-managed super fund. It doesn't matter what sort of construction, house and land package, it has to be one contract for both. There is a couple of lenders that will do NDIS, and there are builders that will actually package it up to be one contract. So the contract at the land and the building is one contract, and there is some lenders that will do that in the space. And you're right, they treat it as a commercial deal, not as a normal resi deal, which just, in really simple terms, it affects the loan to value ratio, and it also affects the interest rate. But it can be done. But very
loan to value ratio. What's that? Sorry, mate. The L.
So if you buy something for $1 million and you loan 700,000, let's say, that's a 70% loan to value ratio.
Of course. Yeah. Sorry, I knew that. Now, that triggers, again, I'm looking at the book that I downloaded from you here, and it's talking about LMI as well. So lenders, mortgage, insurance, I'm guessing that 250 grand that we contribute, right? Does that go into the purchase price? Does that negate the need to pay LMI? How does that all work?
Well, up to 80% loan to value ratio, there is no LMI. There's very few lenders that will go above that, but they do exist to 90%, and they actually call it a risk fee, most of them, but it's just another name for LMI. So there is the odd lender that will do it, but 85% of them won't let you go over the sort of 80% for a resi and 70% for a commercial. But it is available, and they do call it a risk. They do charge a risk fee, which is just simply LMI. Like
you said before, right? There's going to be 200, maybe 250 that we contribute, right?
Yes.
So an LVR of 20% on that would be $1 million property. So if we went out and bought $1 million property in our SMSF, we'd contribute. If we had 250 in there, we'd contribute 250. So 50 would be left over in the fund, right?
Yeah. Let's say that includes
minus fees and charges and all the.
Let's say that includes stamp duty. So yeah, you're okay.
Okay.
Let's keep it.
Okay. I kind of get that. So it's there's a lot to unpack on my end here. I have got your book, so I've kind of, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking at some of the information as I'm talking to you, so it makes a little bit more sense. And some of the stuff in the book, start to open up as well. But there are a lot of questions there now.
So some of them,
yes,
it's on that point. Some of them do require liquidity. Some lenders. So some of them want you to keep back 10% of your funds. So like if you've got 250K, they want after you purchased 10%. Some don't. Okay. So again, that's where, depending on what you want to do and how much you want to spend, we need to go to the right lender.
As a teacher, I am aware that for a lot of places, I only require a 10% deposit, but that's in the retail sort of environment, standard investments. Will that also apply in the SMSF environment as well? Maybe. No. Okay.
Okay. And so yeah, there's actually
lending. Okay.
Yeah. There's actually only a couple of lenders that will do that anyway. And you get really technical because if you're looking at the change in the rules, going to a 90% LVR, you're going to have negative gearing. So you then might be able to claim it. This is what our government's done, unfortunately. Made life much more confusing.
All right. So talk to me then about how I
that's one of the things I do is I can run all those little numbers if that's what you want to look at.
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit of a pain in the ass because I'm going to kind of have you go through everything, because it sounds like it's a beneficial thing to do. Is it something you're allowed to recommend as a broker? Is that the advice you're allowed to provide? I know brokers kind of aren't allowed to give specific advice in that respect, but
correct. No, technically,
but you're allowed to give me the facts, right?
Technically, I need to pretty much keep in my lane of mortgage broking, but it overlaps some parts, and obviously I can put you into the right people that I trust to help you set it up.
And that's why you said I might.
And there's bits and pieces that will come up that come up in conversation, for example, and that obviously I can. I've got one at the moment, and because I know the real estate world as well, I've been able to tell him things on that side of things as well. And so, you can pick my brain if you like, but it's not technical advice.
And how does the investment?
I will always say, go back to, this is what I believe it to be. Go back and check with your accountant. Go back and check with your conveyancer. Right.
I'm looking through right now. I'm looking through sort of some of the scenarios and things like that on your website. I've got it open while I'm talking to you. Can you tell me, like, what's the process involved in a investment loan? Like, does it differ from the loan that we took out on the house? Like, what's the process? How long does it take? What are the fees and charges? What am I going to have to pay? How do I get started? Where does it? How does it all work?
We always start with the servicing. So you at least know how much you can borrow and how much you can spend. It is different from the Submarine Super Fund servicing is based, put in really simple terms, on what your super contributions are and what rent you would get from the property. Okay?
Yep.
So that's the income, and then that has to be able to cover the loan and generally the running costs of the super fund. So that's the starting point. What can you borrow and what can you service? Then the application is does take a bit longer with a super fund because you have structures involved. In very simple terms, they often get legal to check your deeds, like you have to supply your deeds, for example. So the process is a bit longer than doing just a straight resi loan, mainly because of the structures. And they do look behind it a bit because you still do guarantee it, even though it's a non-recourse loan, you still are guaranteed behind it. So they do look, again, that makes sure the strength of you as a guarantor. Okay? So it's a bit of a double up compared to just looking at you to go buy a resi property, for example. So I gather information just like I do. There is more information involved in a self-managed super fund for sure because of the structures.
If there was a shortfall for a period of time, so if it wasn't rented, if there were, I'm just thinking of all those cases where you might have to contribute money, right? Do I pay that out of my net income, or can I go back to the department and say, I want you to make this voluntary extra contribution on top? And does the tax maybe differ on the basis of who makes that contribution? Because I'm considering my net pay.
So try and keep it simple again. Let's say you're putting in $20,000 a year from your salary, just to keep it simple. The maximum contributions that are deductible contributions is $30,000 currently. So if there happened to be, as you say, a period of rent and there was a shortfall in the super fund, or you don't let it get to a shortfall, but it needs some money, you can go back to your employer and say, I'd like to make a salary sacrifice contribution, which again, you could put in another 10 if you needed to, up to $10,000, which does change your tax. Going to the super fund, you're only paying 15%. Taking it as a salary, you're paying 30%. So you still actually get an advantage by doing that. The disadvantage is that once it goes in super fund, you can't get it back out until you're a certain age.
But you mentioned an offset account before, so I can't. Does that mean I cannot make a voluntary contribution out of my net pay into a self-managed super fund and then withdraw that money? I'm seeing your eyes roll. Does that mean like I'll have to talk to a financial advisor? Or is there a blanket rule there?
Yeah. There's no reason why you do it out of net funds. It doesn't
make sense.
No. And once it goes in, doesn't matter whether it's a concessional or non-concessional, you can put in more than the 30. It's classed as a non-concessional, and you're really getting into
I'm just
me on how you can get that money out when it's a non-concessional. It's taxed.
Yeah, I'm just curious from a tax point of view, because the missus and I are just looking at obviously tax minimization and everything else. So what then is the benefit? You said that an SMSF can have an offset account. What's the benefit of that offset account? How can that be used? And how does that compare to the standard redraw, which we have on our current loan?
You can't have a redraw in a sub.
You can't have a redraw. Of course you can't, because you can't withdraw from the fund itself. So what's the benefit of the offset? How can that be used?
It's just like a normal offset, where it reduces the interest component being charged on the loan. Your repayments don't change. So, for example, let's say you've got a 100K sitting in an offset and you're being charged, let's make it simple, 10% interest. You are going to save $10,000 on interest. You will pay, and the other benefit is you will pay down your loan quicker. So if you didn't have an offset and the interest was $15,000, and with your $100,000 in the offset, you save 10, you then would only be charged $5,000 interest that particular year. Your repayments are the same, assuming P&I, principal and interest, and therefore you will pay the loan off quicker.
Yeah.
And it's an automatic return of what the interest rate they're charging you without you investing in something else. The other great advantage of that is you might only, after you made the purchase, you might only have a small amount left over, leave it in the offset account, let it build up, and then you might want to go and buy some shares or any other investment. So it's a very good way of saving, because if you had it in just in a normal transaction account or even a term deposit, it would only be about half the return. while you're trying to build your funds up.
Aha, I see. So
Too much? Make sense?
I can no, I can use the SMSF then. Just my mind's racing, as Michael Scott would say, is racing at a mile an hour. No, if you don't watch The Office, you won't get that reference. But so you're saying that, and it should have been clear to me. I can use that SMSF to actually like build a little SMSF empire. So I can, if the SMSF is generating returns, I can use the equity in the SMSF property then, or what's available in the offset and then to build another SMSF. No.
You can use the money in the offset. You cannot use the equity if you have a current property and it doubles. The equity is stuck there as one of the disadvantages, definitely, compared to being outside a self-managed super fund. You cannot.
So it's a longer term thing. It's a longer term.
Absolutely.
Thing. Yeah.
These are.
How long should I plan to have? 10 year. Okay. But I can sell what's in an SMSF to upgrade it.
You can sell it. Yeah, absolutely. You can sell it, and that way you obviously should get the funds left over, and you can go again. You can buy 2 properties with the because you'd have the deposit once you sell it. So yes, you can go that way,
okay.
And obviously you've got the benefit of the low capital gains tax.
All right, that all makes sense. You mentioned the interest rate. I'm told the interest rate is higher. Yes, so
the interest rate is definitely higher. The big boys, so to speak, the big four, do not lend for self-managed super funds. So it's all what I would call second-tier lenders. Their cost of funding is higher. Therefore, they charge a higher rate. And self-managed super funds is probably still even a little bit higher. It's something around the way they look at the risk rate and their capital cost. That's probably above me, but the end result is that the rates are slightly higher. And coming back to what we spoke about before, it's very, very dependent on what your loan-to-value ratio is. So the higher you go in loan-to-value ratio, the higher the interest rate. And there is a difference between commercial and resi as well. Commercial is slightly higher again than residential.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. So are you able to tell me then, like, what my missus and I, like, if we started going out looking for property right now, and should we be looking for the property, or should we consult, with somebody that maybe has better access to the off-market off-market properties and things like that? Because I don't like the idea of buyer's agents. They seem to charge an enormous amount of money for, what is most of the time this little valuation they get off realestate.com.au. So, it just feels like a bit of a rort. So where do we go from here? What are the missus and I doing? I'll get her on another call because it sounds like something we should be doing.
Okay. In relation to buyers advocates, I have seen on more than one occasion, and there's good ones and bad ones, like there is in every industry. I've seen on more than one occasion them save people the fee. I have had people that want to do this because it's a super fund. They don't seem to have the urgency or the emotional attachment to if it's in their own name for some reason. I don't know why, but it is. And they said it seems to get dragged on. It doesn't get to the top of the list. So that's where buyer's agents can be really good on making sure you do buy the right appropriate property for a super fund, number one, and that it actually does start to happen. Number two. Number three, you can widen your... I've had people buy in Queensland and in WA in the last couple of years. So how would you do that yourself? So one of them he wanted a commercial property. He used a buyer's advocate to find him a commercial property. So that's where they can be useful. Now, having said that, if you're happy to buy in Melbourne or wherever you're based and can do all the legwork yourself and you're prepared to do that, sure. Just be aware of which I can give you a list of what type of properties don't fit, so you don't go looking at them and wasting your time. But it is a bit of a personal thing, but I can guarantee you Like I know young guy, he was prepared to pay 620. He told me he was prepared to pay 620. The buyer's advocate got it for him for 600. So more than covered the fee. So
Yeah.
it depends. It depends. Yeah. If you don't like them, don't trust them. And as you
Well,
just
600
mentioned,
and 620, I've seen buyers agents charge 30. So if they're asking 620,
he was a young guy. Because he was such a young guy, and the buyer's advocate likes to help young people, he charged him $8,000.
that's not typical for most buyers agents, though. I've seen some guys, by the way, charge like 1 or 2%, like 2%, 3%.
I've seen some of these ones that stitch you up in, they want to do everything. Absolutely everything the whole way through. You charge well over 20K. And I don't. And I've seen some of the properties and I go, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think
Having said that, I have seen them go up, but will they keep going up? That's the question.
Yeah, it just seems like such the risks in a self-managed super fund. I understand, like if you are making, if I am covering the shortfall, at least I'm making those contributions into that sort of tax haven, if you like. Then I know it's not the appropriate word, but
extraction,
closest thing. Yeah, that's
no tax havens.
No, sorry, mate. You know what I mean, though. If I'm making those voluntary contributions on the shortfall, but that does worry me a little bit that I'd be investing in property where I'd have to make, like, I'd be obligated to provide those contributions to cover the shortfall in rent or to cover, if the market crashed. What happens if the property market crashes and we lose 20 to 30% on, property values countrywide, which people talk about all the time. We can't say it's impossible. It's unlikely, and it's certainly not something that. Yeah,
The risk is the same as far as the type of property, whether it's inside or outside a self-managed super fund. You can probably tell I've been around a while. I've seen property go down and up, and that's why I always tell people this is at least a 10-year sort of investment view that you need to take when you look at buying property so that you can ride those waves. There's no guarantee.
So I'm thinking about the risks here. I'm thinking about the risks. So if Anna and I wanted to, calling her the missus, if Anna and I wanted to go and buy a new car, right, all of a sudden, if you had an investment property and you had appropriate equity, and I could re-borrow against, if I needed to, against the, equity. I've got my own house for that sort of stuff anyhow, so it's not a real problem, but it does mean that I'm locked out from any benefit that might be gained from that SMSF until retirement. So it's truly, it's purely a wealth building process and setting myself up for retirement. Yeah.
Excellent.
So what can I expect?
The main point of self-managed super fund is building wealth for retirement. I forget the technical term off the top of my head, but that's it's called a sole purpose test. So the sole purpose test is to provide benefits for retirement. That is your main responsibility when you have your own self-managed super fund.
Ballpark figures then. My standard fund compared to a self-managed super fund. How likely am I to see the self-managed super fund perform less or return less than the standard consumer fund I'm with now? Like, I don't want to have this hassle and then come out the other end and be worse off. What's the likelihood?
You're basing it on the power.
Possible, right?
Yes, because you're basing it on the power of leverage. So it multiplies the gains because it's leveraged, but it will also multiply the losses in theory. But I can only say again, I've been around a long time. I haven't seen, if you're in there long enough, hopefully, but it is absolutely a risk. But there's risks in crossing the road, but you've got that exact same risk if you invest in your own name to investing in a self-managed super fund. So the risk is the same. So you almost got to say, well, do I want to invest in property? Whether it's inside or outside, You're going to have leverage inside or outside a self-managed super fund, so the risks are the same. But yes, of course there's risks. There's risks with everything. But
So
the power of leverage in a self-managed super fund to having just a retail fund is where you have the potential to get the better returns.
So, on your website, it's got all standard investment borrowing and first home borrowing, all that sort of stuff as well. So if Anna and I decided that an SMSF wasn't for us,
it's not for everyone.
Yeah, but you can still just help us with a standard investment loan, can't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, having an accounting background, I've been an investor for years, been in real estate for years, so I know most of that stuff sort of backwards. So definitely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I probably prefer those types of deals to a simple, buy a home and just two salary people. They're white, vanilla deals, we call them.
I see.
The investor one more interesting.
All right.
I can punch all the numbers. It's one of my skills.
Yeah, I guess you'll probably need those numbers. And are you able to help with sort of showing me what potential gains that might come off an SMSF compared to the consumer fund, which doesn't seem like the fees we pay on the consumer funds are really high. And I don't really understand why. I really can't justify the fees we pay on our current fund. And I guess those fees that we're paying would probably offset those costs that you talked about, like a planner and all that sort of stuff, because that's largely one-off, isn't it? The financial plan, do I need to keep them on the books?
Do you need to keep them on the books? Good question. If you're just doing... Some people do because they manage the shares. So if they've got a shares and property, they do because they can assist with the shares. If you're just doing a property, probably not. You do have to have, every fund has to have an investment strategy. Now, they normally help you set up that investment strategy, and that investment strategy would need to say that you can invest in property and that you can borrow. Okay, so that's where they but that is an initial setup, but it does theoretically need to be reviewed every year. There are obligations.
I see.
The compliance is there.
So what does it cost to maintain? No. What does it cost to maintain the SMSF roughly? Like, is it $1,000, $2,000, $10,000?
It's $3,000 to $5,000, depending on the complexity.
Okay, so that comes out of the gains from the property. So and that might be like for a property that just returns a small amount, that might only just cover those ongoing costs with the SMSF. So once again, I'm sort of leaning on that equity and everything else, aren't I? So, okay.
Yeah.
So I can see
you're going up to capital growth. Whenever you got leverage, you're going up to capital growth.
Yeah. What's
the rent will theoretically go up, and if it was a commercial property, it's in the lease that it keeps going up. But
yeah.
And resi rents have been going up and up and up. So there is that as well. And if your pay happens to go up, your super contributions also increase.
People I talk to all the time, like my kids at school have parents that sort of invest in commercial property and stuff. If you personally had to invest in a property tomorrow, would you lean in the direction of residential stuff or commercial? Because commercial yields seem to be quite high. So
very easy for me. Very easy answer for me personally. Commercial. The reasons I like commercial is you get a higher percentage rental return. Number one, the tenant pays a lot of the costs. You do have multi-year lease, so they're longer leases than resi.
Yeah.
So it's lower maintenance because the tenant has to look after a lot of it. And higher returns. They do pay a higher interest rate as well, but you also know how your rent's going to increase over the next 3, 5, etc., because there's options for them to renew the lease. The risk is the tenant goes. it can take longer to rent. So resi might take 1 month. It could take 4 or 5 months to get a new tenant in a commercial, because there's less people that want to. But that's, again, comes back to the type of property. And again, you might not like buyer's advocate, but what do you know about commercial property? If I was buying a commercial property, I'd use a buyer's advocate. There's some specialised in it.
Yeah. All right. So you're able to then crunch our numbers then and tell me what we can borrow and.
Yep. We can look at, okay, this is if you did it in your own name. This is if you did it in a self-managed super fund. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. It's interesting to see how the property, with the increasing value, with the reduced tax and everything else, really leverages that growth. It really gives you that massive return at the other end. Like that's the thing that surprised me more so than, investing in the residential stuff. So we still have the capacity then, on the basis of, tell me this, because this is right. Everything we've looked at is SMSF based, and it looks based on the numbers you just showed me and everything else, and based on my wife's income, my income, and that borrowing capacity that you showed us, and all that sort of stuff. Right? It all looks like the SMSF could well be, and is very likely to be on it, based on our situation, sort of self-sustaining, right? So it doesn't look like we're going to have any kind of financial obligation, really, because based on those numbers, and the returns of retirement are so significantly more. That's the thing that gets me, right? That leveraging figure with the reduced tax and the extra that you showed me with voluntary contributions there. Like, even if we paid that $100 a week, you showed me the difference it makes and things like that. It's quite extraordinary. Just that small impact in the contribution. When you went down and showed me, okay, if we just put in $50 a week or $20 a week, and it still makes that significant difference. And it does. I guess we've only got that small amount, very small amount remaining on our own mortgage, right? So tell me this, because we didn't go through those numbers specifically. Would we be better off paying off more into our SMSF, or paying down our owner-occupied home, that small amount that's left on our own house? If you don't want to answer it, because when you roll your eyes like that, I can kind of tell you. Is it a financial advisor question?
Pretty much.
You keep on telling me I probably need to talk to a financial advisor about that. That's one of them. So,
it's a little bit personal as well. Some people, what I don't like about paying off your house, and that's probably my more why I roll my eyes, is you're not using that equity. That equity is there, and now with some of the changes in the rules, you're going to be limited on drawing that equity out, because it becomes debt. So that's the problem. You've got all this equity in your house and you're not using it.
Who's on the deed? When you're buying an SMSF, who's on the deed for the house? Is it the SMSF fund itself?
When you say deed,
who owns it? It's registered to whom?
The Bear Trust.
Yeah, so all of the trust.
I used to get under the Bear Trust. I tried to keep it simple.
Trust. Yeah. You mentioned it a couple of times, the trust accounts and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's when you kept on telling me to talk to a financial advisor. Yeah. Explain us that.
You buy the property in a Bear Trust, and it holds the property, and that's one of the other reasons why you can't do redraws, because it's effectively another entity on behalf of the super fund. Okay, I'm trying to keep it simple. So
I understand.
I've complicated it already. So
no.
But yes, a Bear Trust comes into play, and the Bear Trust owns that one entity, and that's what I did mention about. It's got to be one title, and that's why, because a Bear Trust owns one title, one asset. If you buy other properties, you've got to have another Bear Trust.
Yeah. So all that
And it's depending on which
documentation
state
that
you're
you
in.
talked about where,
And different states actually put things on different names on the contract of sale, believe it or not.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, the next question. Like I said, this thing seems to be this self-contained thing that sits on the side and just generates a better return. I can't see, based on the numbers that I worked on personally for an investment property, like it's really significantly more. It just seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me. Tell me this: why doesn't everybody do what you've just described? Is it because of the short term, flipping whatever those flipping houses, that kind of thing that people do? Is that
Because you are a bit restricted on number one, you've got to have that minimum balance. So someone who's 25 is generally not going to have $250,000 sitting in the super fund. So they've got to get to that stage before they even consider it, number one. Number two, if you are at 35, 40 and you've got $250,000, do you want to put more money in there that's tied up until you retire? So some people go, oh no, I'm still 25 years away. I don't want all this money sitting in my super fund at this stage.
Yeah.
That's just the way some people think. They think they're too young. Having said that, the main age group now for setting up self-managed super funds, I can't remember who reported it, is 35 to 45. So you've at least got to be 35. Most people, the other reason people don't do it, as you've probably seen today, it is complicated. And it does take some work and some effort to make sure you stay compliant. So it is easier just to have it go into a retail fund and be taken out of your pay. And, I could say people are lazy, but that's the fact of life. It takes some time and effort and takes money.
35 to 45. I don't mean to drag this conversation on, but it's really interesting because I read the other day that the average first-time buyer is over the age of 35 as well, right? So somebody could essentially get into the first-time buyer market on the basis of their super, couldn't they? It's very different in that it is a sideline entity, but is that something that perhaps I'm just thinking of my younger brother here. Is that something he might consider?
Well, he's giving up any of the first-time buyer benefits. So it would completely just depend on his circumstances.
Right. But he doesn't have the deposit. Like so many people just don't have that deposit for their first home.
Well, our government's now giving deposits. There was a new scheme started in December 2025 where the government will give you up to 30% of the deposit. Brand new scheme. And very little press about it.
Wow. Is that nationwide? Is that federal government?
Yes, federal. It's a federal scheme. It's a shared equity scheme. And you only need 2%.
Wow, that's that's crazy. Then that's not heavily promoted. If I don't know,
I don't know why.
A bit of reading.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I recently saw some ads being run on very late at night, but that was the press just seemed, I don't know whether they went off on Christmas holidays, but there was very little press about it.
Shared equity, does that mean you share equity with the government?
Correct.
And they take part of the equity as the property grows in value? I'm not sure I want to own a house with Anthony Albanese at the moment. I'm not sure I trust him. Great.
That's what I say. You're getting into bed with the government. I should go one step further. Having said that, I had a young guy. He went from being able to, I think it was a purchase price. He was a young guy that was only worked in a call center earning 60K. All of a sudden, he went from being able to buy something, I think it was 450 up to nearly 600. And what do you think he did?
Wow.
Do you want to live in something that's worth 450 or do you want to live in something that's worth 600? That's the price.
Yeah. So basically,
you do have income restrictions. You do have reporting responsibilities, but sure, I'd rather live in a $600,000 place than a $450,000 place. So that's just that's a true example.
Depends on where it is.
Yep. for example.
All right. Okay. The last thing I've got for you, mate, is everything we've discussed, and I appreciate it, mate. I appreciate the time you've given to me. But does this impact Anna and I going out and buying an investment property outside the SMSF in any way? Does this does the lender consider the SMSF obligations when they assess our capacity to borrow money for an investment property, given that we've got all that equity in the house, right, that we own now?
It always comes back to servicing, and the super fund services on its own, not your income. It's what a lot of people make mistake. They start telling me their income, and I'm going, well, it's sort of really not that important. It does come into play, but in the sense of what your super contributions are. But no, the servicing is treated separately. It's a separate legal entity. So it actually helps when you're servicing in your own name, if that makes sense.
Okay. So if I came back to you after we went through this process, which it looks like, something would definitely explore.
Then
So, okay, we're now ready for an investment property more investigation. Out a bit there, mate.
don't do what everyone else does and go and buy the property and find a property and then say, can we buy it? we should work out your servicing capacity and therefore your purchasing power, what deposit you have, whichever way it is, in your own name or your super fund, before you really go out and look. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go and check out the market and see how hot it is, how cold it is. There are lots of buyers. It is a seller's market. But you're better to have things in place before you go and actually make a purchase.
All right, I just got to clear that up, right? I'm just going to give it an example. Right now, if I came to you, right, hypothetically, and you said, okay, based on what you've just told me, you can borrow $1.5 million, right? Go and buy an investment property worth $1.5 million based on everything, based on the deposit, based on my wife's income and my income, all that sort of stuff that you do and you did before. But then I go out and buy a property into my SMSF. Okay. So the SMSF is now running everything else. I come back to you and say, you said before I can borrow, $1.5 million. Does that figure change on the basis of the SMSF obligation? Does it limit our ability to
in your own name
build property in my own name outside of the SMSF?
In short, no.
In short, no. So the lender might say, oh, you've got this SMSF obligation, therefore we're only going to give you $400,000. No. Typically, no. No. Okay.
It's as I said, they treat it as a separate entity. Now, I know they don't do that with trusts and companies all the time, but SMSF is different in that way. So yes, you'd still be okay in your own name or your service.
Excellent. What I might do is I'll get as we discussed before, mate, I'll get my wife on that call with you and we'll get the ball rolling probably. So what was your best contact number again? Like if I was to call you directly?
0418 327 025.
So 0418 327 025. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. You'll send me that stuff and in fact, it's just come into my inbox now. Excellent. Thanks for that.
Okay.
All right. So we'll talk about it. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it. Thanks for your help.
Thanks for your time.
Really enjoyed it. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Enjoy your day. Okay.
Bye-bye.